I'm Shakayla Alvarenga, the Director of Public Programs here at the Mob Museum, and welcome to tonight's program, Web of Deceit, Battling the Cybercrime Underworld. So tonight's event is, I think, fitting in between Black Hat USA and the DEF CON Hacking Conference. Has anyone been this week? Hands? Yeah. So as you probably know, and if you've been at the convention this week, cybercrime has obviously become one of the most pressing issues of our time. And as we integrate technology deeper into just about every aspect of our lives, from our homes, our cars, financial systems, and critical infrastructure, we've sort of inadvertently created this vast and vulnerable landscape for digital predators. So it's become not just about stolen passwords and hacked email accounts anymore. It's a sophisticated multi-million-dollar industry that threatens individuals, businesses, and even nations. And tonight we are privileged to have two renowned experts who will shed light on this shadowy underworld. A special thank you to One Nevada Credit Union for sponsoring this event as well. So joining us are Mikko Hypponen and Alissa Knight. I'll start right here with Miko. He is a respected voice in global security and the author of If It's Smart, It's Vulnerable. He's lectured at Stanford, Oxford, and Cambridge and has been recognized as one of the 50 most important people on the web. He is currently the Chief Research Officer at WithSecure. He joins us all the way from Finland. Welcome.
Thank you.
And to our left is Alissa Knight, who brings a unique perspective as a former Black Hat hacker. She is now an author, film director, cybersecurity expert, known for her work in car and API hacking, and we'll go through that in a few minutes. After an early brush with the law, she transitioned to supporting U.S. intelligence operations before becoming a successful entrepreneur in the cybersecurity field, and she lives just a few blocks away in Las Vegas. Welcome. So tonight our speakers will share their experiences in combating cybercrime gangs and provide eye-opening insights into how hackers expose weaknesses and exploit everyday technology. And we'll begin with a brief presentation from each of them, followed by a Q&A session. So Miko, let's begin with you.
Thank you, Shakila, and thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Indeed, my name is Mikko, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not a local. Helsinki, Finland is up north in Europe, and if you look at the map, we have a very big neighbor, the biggest country in the world, that's Russia. I live 2 hours away from the Russian border. I've lived there all my life, which is one of the reasons I work in cybersecurity, as I've been tracking Russian crime gangs for a very long time. So let's start from the beginning. I started programming originally on one of these. That's a computer you've never seen because that's made by Nokia. Nokia, the biggest technology company, one of the biggest technology companies in Europe. Nokia, which is still around today. They're nowadays a 5G base station manufacturer. But in the 1980s, they made computers. I started programming on one of these, later migrated into one of these. That's a Commodore 64. And that's the computer I started publishing software with. I started writing utilities and games. Here's a game I wrote in 1987 as a teenager, which was commercially published, and that's an adventure game. And once again, you can't understand what it says because that's Finnish. We have very long words in our language. This gave me an interest into low-level workings of computers, which came then pretty naturally handy when viruses started becoming a problem in late 1980s, early 1990s. And I started analyzing viruses around 1991, viruses like the legalized virus, which is from the Netherlands, or Virusoft from Russia, the Phantom 1 virus from Lithuania, and the Crash virus, another example from Russia. This is early 1990s. And here's actually a photo of myself in 1992 analyzing a virus I actually have with me. Right here. Some of you might remember what these are. Some of you have no clue what these are. This is the USB thumb drive of the 1990s. We called them floppies, and this one actually is infected for real. It's infected with a virus called brain.A. And brain.A was actually before the time I started doing professional cybersecurity research. It's from 1986. It's the very first PC virus in history. But in the early 1990s, when I got started, there were so few viruses in existence that I actually collected them all, and I analyzed every single one of them, including Brain. And when I was going through the Brain source code, the binary code of the very first virus, I realized that there's a hidden message. A message hidden into the floppy boot sector, on the very first sector of the floppy I showed to you. A short message and an address. Address in city of Lahore in Pakistan. So what do? Well, I went to the city of Lahore in Pakistan, and I went to the address which was mentioned inside the boot sector virus, and I found the two original authors of the very first PC virus. This was 20 years later, and they were still at the same address 20 years later. In fact, they're still there today. I still keep in touch with the two brothers who wrote the very first PC virus in 1986, who basically started the whole problem. There's a documentary about this trip on YouTube if you're interested in the history of early malware on computers. And another thing which might be interesting to some of you is that if you go to the Internet Archive on internet, archive.org website, there's a collection of old viruses which you can actually run safely on your computer today to see what they will do. We call it the Internet Archive. I recommend you check it out. Nowadays, I work as the Chief Research Officer for a company called WithSecure, and as my professional job, I track organized crime gangs. Organized crime has changed, and in the world of cybersecurity, the largest gangs actually do branding. The logos you see on screen are all examples of organized underground cybercrime gangs, most of them, once again, from Russia. Most of these are ransomware gangs, and they do branding. They have names, they run websites, they have logos, they do branding, which might sound weird, but then again, we are at the Mob Museum right now, and of course, organized crime, the traditional organized crime likes brands as well. Think Hells Angels, or Bandidos, or Cosa Nostra, or Yakuza, or MS-13, Los Zetas. They all do branding. They have logos. They are trying to build a brand which is well-known and scary. And that's exactly the same thing these cybercrime gangs like Lockbit are trying to do. If you don't work in the industry, you might never have heard of Lockbit, but people in the industry, they think about Lockbit like normal people think about Hells Angels. Like it's someone you don't mess around with. They're scary. They've been around. They know what they're doing. That's why they build brands. And these brands are so strong that people actually take tattoos of these cybercrime brands, just like people take Hells Angels tattoos. So, I've been working in this field for 33 years. The technology that we use for our everyday lives has completely changed over these years. And cybercrime has become one of the biggest threats we face as we use technology in our everyday lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can't follow that. I'm just going to say good night and walk out. Everyone have a good night. Thank you for coming. I'm Alissa Knight. Miko definitely has me beat. My first computer was a 486 SX25. But definitely remember floppies. I'm a recovering hacker, is what I like to say, because I feel like you never fully recover. I started hacking when I was 13. And when I was 17, I was on my way into school where the law enforcement agents were waiting to arrest me. I had hacked into a government network when I was 17 the charges were dropped, and I subsequently went to go work for the U.S. intelligence community in cyber warfare. I've started and sold several companies. After that, I'm most known for hacking 50 banks in less than a week. That also included cryptocurrency exchanges. And I took remote control of law enforcement vehicles, so I worked really closely with law enforcement after I published my first book on hacking connected cars. And law enforcement reached out to me on a particular project and figured out a vulnerability that affected every Ford car on the road, where as long as you knew the VIN number, I could remotely start and stop the engine or remotely lock and unlock the doors. So it was a good ride for those 24 years in cyber. I currently run a group of companies called Knight Group with my wife, Mel. We own a coffee company, an events company. We also own studios, so I'm also now producing several TV series in Hollywood. Just finished production on a new HBO series. I have really made that transition that most people make of going from CEO to hacker to a Hollywood director. So, typical American dream, right? I've started and sold 2 companies. I sold my first company when I was 20 years old and sold my second successful startup when I was 27. So typical childhood, typical growing up story. And I published a previous book on hacking connected cars, and I'm now currently working on a memoir. The interesting thing about Knight Studios is we also own a game company. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is some of my published research that I've published in hacking banks and cryptocurrency exchanges. You can go out online on my website at alisaknight.com and download it for free. So I published all of my findings and how I was able to hack those bank accounts and that many banks in less than a week. And that's because of APIs. And we won't go into depth on that tonight, but basically our entire financial infrastructure is now powered by APIs. The cars that you drive around in on the road, whether you're a Tesla or a Honda or a Daewoo, it doesn't matter what you're driving, is connected online, and they're talking to APIs. And so that's two of I think about 30 vulnerability research papers I published. I also hacked 30 mobile health app and teledoctor apps in 2020 during the COVID, height of COVID. So telemedicine became really big at that time because no one could go see their doctors. These are the 2 books. You can go buy Hacking Connected Cars on Amazon if you're interested in learning how to hack cars. And my memoir will be out actually late next year, which I'm super excited about. So let's watch a trailer.
Everything you need is on this drive. It's 5 million euros. It's a bank hack. Once you spot the vulnerability, move 10 million from the source account to the offshore one. And then let me know when you're done.
Last job links. I feel like you can say you finally made it when you've been turned into a video game avatar. So that's the trailer for our new hacker game where you can actually play the role of a hacker and hack into banks or play the role of a defender and defend against it. So that will be out later this year. And that's it for my presentation. So thank you.
All right, so let's get into it. So a few weeks ago, if you all remember, a major IT outage affected airports and businesses worldwide. Does anyone remember this? Okay. I was on the plane while this happened, so dreadful story. So several major airlines issued ground stops during this debacle. Now, while this wasn't a cyber attack, I think it really highlighted just our global dependence on interconnected systems. So a question for the both of you, and you can kind of toss off each other. What lessons do you think cybersecurity experts can learn from this incident that happened worldwide?
Well, this was one single company screwing up. They just happened to have a very large part of the largest companies here in the United States as their customers. The company in question, CrowdStrike, specializes in enterprise customers like airlines and companies like that. The mistake they made is that as they were shipping updates, they didn't do proper testing for one particular update. Even basic rudimentary testing would have caught the mistake they made, but they, for unknown reasons, didn't really test it on real hardware, like real computers at all. They only ran it through systems that checked that it looked okay, but didn't actually run it. And the problem security software in general has is that it has to run on every computer with rights to do everything. We would call that it runs as full administrator rights or root rights. It has to have access to everything so it can stop the attacks. That also means that the margin for error is really small. If they make a mistake, they can crash the whole computer. Normal programs can only crash themselves. Programs which run with admin rights can crash the whole computer. And to make matters worse, there's no other software which is updated as frequently as security software. Your iPhone might get a new OS every 2 months or something like that. This security software gets updated several times a day, maybe even several times an hour. And when you combine this, you end up with a scenario where a really risky software is updated very frequently, which means that the testing has to be done really carefully, and that's the mistake they made.
Yeah, here's the thing. One of the primary tenets of cybersecurity is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And a lot of people think that, well, okay, this wasn't really a cybersecurity event because they weren't hacked. But if something technological affects something technological and it affects availability, that's a cybersecurity issue. It's not, we aren't called to the front lines in cyberspace to defend against just hackers trying to break into the network. It's insider threats. It's availability issues, things not being reachable in order to support the business. That's why I'm always saying cybersecurity isn't a technology problem; it's a people problem, because it touches so much more than just that. So yeah. That's my view. I feel the lessons learned for cybersecurity is that cybersecurity is an everyone problem. It's an everyone responsibility. And those QA testers who didn't test, the QA availability, uptime, that's cybersecurity.
And of course, it is ironic that the software which is supposed to keep your system from crashing was the thing that actually crashed your computer.
Mm-hmm. Has that ever happened to you?
No, not to us, not in that sense, but it could tear it. I mean, you could always screw up. Of course, there was probably a single person who made a mistake inside the company, someone who had a really bad day. They were supposed to do something and they didn't. But, I'd like to think that the software company I work for, we wouldn't do that. But of course, you should never say never.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit more deeper into the cybercrime topic. What are the most common types of cybercrimes that are targeting individuals and businesses today?
I think we're both going to say the same thing. It's probably, I'd say number one would be ransomware now. When I got into hacking back in the 90s, it was like mass defacements of websites. It was Rafa was here, World of Hell. And being able to say I defaced NASA.gov, it's evolved in many senses to its own economy, its own industry. It's for-profit hacking, and that's what ransomware is all about. Is not just compromising the network, but ransoming the company in order to get a payout to be able to give them their data back. I assume that's probably what Miko would say too.
I would agree.
Ransomware is the big one right now.
Although we can also look at it from a different point of view, from the average internet users, home users, consumers, from their point of view, ransomware is not the number one problem. From their point of view, the number one problem is just scams, like auction scams or investment scams or romance scams. 60% of relationships today start online. It's no wonder that people can easily be scammed and they really fall in love with a person who doesn't exist at all. And when they finally figure out that it's actually a scammer who's just been scamming for weeks or months just to get some money out of you, when you finally realize that you've been had, you don't only lose the money, you also lose the love of your life. So it takes a really cold person to some of these scams that we see. So there's a big difference in the attacks and the problems consumers see and that companies see. Home users typically targeted by scams, companies and enterprises by ransomware, and also with their version of scams, which would be CEO scams or
BEC, like
BEC, business email compromise attacks, trying to get the financial people inside the organization fooled to wire money into wrong accounts or things like that.
Where do these attacks typically originate from?
Well, I would say in one way or another, developing nations is the biggest single source. And when I say developing nations, I clearly mean ex-Soviet Union, not just Russia by itself, but Belarus, Ukraine is one source where we see attacks coming from Kazakhstan and so on. But also countries like different African countries, South America, Brazil is a big source of attacks, Southeast Asia, Vietnam is very clearly growing as an origin of cybercrime. And I'm not saying that we're not seeing criminals from the West. We are. I'm just saying we're seeing more of them from countries where it's not as easy to get a well-paying job if you know technology. If you know how to program systems and you live in the United States, you can get a well-paying job, easy. If you have the same skills and you're somewhere in the countryside of China or Siberia or in the slums of Sao Paulo, the easiest way for you to make a lot of money is to go into life of online crime. So in many ways, this is not a technology problem, it's a social problem. And social problems are much harder to fix.
So obviously this is a line of work that the both of you have been involved in for quite a bit of time. How do you think it has changed over the past decade from when you started and doing your investigations then till now?
I think that we could probably have a whole event on that topic, just because of how much has changed. You've got cloud that has really changed the ability for forensic analysts and incident responders to do forensic analysis, because a lot of these sites, a lot of these servers now are on these massive cloud virtual systems, multi-tenant systems that you can't call up AWS and say, send me the hard drive from this compromise so I can do forensics. You've got AI that's radically changing it for both defenders and the attacker. As far as from the cybersecurity professional side, I think the biggest change has just been the move to the cloud and how, before we were defending against vulnerabilities and things like FTP servers or email servers, now it's compromised cloud SaaS applications and, multi-cloud and trying to figure out how to defend your company when pretty much a lot of your employees work from home now. And their home network that their daughter games on, is now, because of VPNs, bringing those same security issues and vulnerabilities into your corporate network, because you have to support the remote worker and secure it at the same time. So I think a lot's changed.
If I look at this with a little bit longer perspective, I think actually the most important year when a lot of things changed in cybersecurity was 2003, so 21 years ago. That's when we found the very first money-making malware. Before that, we had tons of malware, but it was all written by hobbyists for fun. They were not getting famous. They were not making money. They wrote malware because they could. That's it. In 2003, money entered the picture. And during the same year, we found the very first government-written malware. The very first sample I worked with was Chinese government's attack against a defense contractor in a European country. And then we started seeing more attacks from other countries as well. Over the last 10 years, I think the single biggest shift has been ransomware changing from a consumer problem into a corporate problem. I just told you that today ransomware is an enterprise problem. Home users are not hit by ransomware at all. 10 years ago, it was different. The very first ransomware cases using Bitcoin were found in 2013, and they were only targeting home users. They were not hitting companies at all. And the ransom they were asking for was $200, $300. So your home computer would get infected. Home computers are really easy to infect, but you can only ask for a small payment. You can't ask for millions from home users because the only thing they've lost is their holiday photos and their email history. They might pay $300, but probably not more. But over the last decade, that has completely shifted. The attackers realize that there's millions to be made if they're able to hack companies, which is much harder, but the payment is so much bigger, it makes sense. And this is one of the things which has really led to this organized cybercrime groups, the groups which I call cybercrime unicorns, to merge, including some of the groups that I showed you the logos of. So for the last 10 years, the biggest problem we have, ransomware, has shifted from being a home user problem into being an enterprise problem.
Alissa, you have such an interesting perspective, sort of this criminal mindset. What do you think are some of the most sophisticated hacking techniques that you've encountered?
You know, I think I've actually been very interested recently in what's called malicious machine learning, malicious AI, where attackers are figuring out that a lot of the cybersecurity controls now are powered by ML. Particularly supervised control, supervised models in AI, which means that garbage in equals garbage out. So depending on how you train those models is what those models will be determined as bad traffic. And so a lot of hackers are now researching, okay, how can I retrain those models to not see me, what's referred to as adversarial ML. So I think AI has been a big one. You know, the more sophisticated, I think, is more on the API side. Just what you can do with APIs, everything from fixed and rotary ring aircraft to the cars on the road. We haven't seen any published attacks where someone has taken remote control of a car in a malicious way. But I see those attacks coming. Even though, so I'm sure many of you read about the story about that hospital in Germany that got infected by ransomware, and this patient was on the way to the hospital, and because all the systems were down, they had to send her to a new hospital where she died in transit. So while you can't say that the ransomware killed her, it was the first time where we have some document evidence where a cybercrime event has affected life and safety. So I think that's really, for me, was an impetus into wanting to continue to understand how to hack APIs, supervisory control systems, SCADA systems, that sort of thing, is because I was always intrigued by the idea. This is about to get really dark. But I was always intrigued by the idea of how can you affect life and safety using computers. Can a virus actually result in someone's death? And things like that. So, that for me, as we continue to bring these really antiquated, very archaic systems online that were previously not connected ever, and then giving them an IP address, you're going to start seeing cyber events affect life and safety. So I think that just sort of, that would be my answer, that movement towards, just dumb things becoming smart, very much your book.
What's your guess when we will see the first criminal hack of a car? What's going to be the motive? What do you think they will be trying to do?
Here's the thing. There's a difference between what's been published as a criminal hack of a car and whether or not there's actually been the criminal hack of a car. I can neither confirm nor deny that I've been in consulting engagements with law enforcement where there was hypothetically may have been the hack of a car that they were bringing me in to figure out how, and this, perfect for the setting, it was an organized crime group, and wanting to understand how they did it. So while there's never been anything published, I would hypothetically go as far to say that I'm sure it's happened.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
What made you decide to transition from hacking to cybersecurity?
I look terrible in orange. Orange is not my color.
That's a good reason.
Here's the thing. So when I was arrested, my mom thought the best punishment when she picked me up from jail, she decided her punishment for me would be to take me to the movie theater. And at the time, there was this movie, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was this movie about these kids that pushed a hot dog cart down the stairs of a subway in New York and accidentally killed this lady. And they went off to prison where they were like brutally raped. So this was her punishment. I was just arrested and thinking oh my gosh, I will die in prison. So that was very scary for me, realizing, actually getting caught and realizing that this could be it for me. They were going to try me as an adult. It was 1 week before my 18th birthday, and they were going to try me as an adult. And my one saving grace was that when they interrogated me, they didn't realize I was a minor, and they interrogated me behind locked doors and didn't, ask for my parents to be there or anything. So I think the answer to your question is just, fear of knowing that I just, prison was not an option for me, and wanted, saw this as this is my second chance. I can do something with my life. And I started my first company at 17 years old after the charges were dropped, and sold my first company when I was 20 for $4.7 million.
Wow. So you were doing consultation with different companies?
So what was happening, shortly thereafter, it's at the time, you have to understand, at the time, it wasn't as sexy to say that you're a former hacker or a convicted hacker. Now in 2024, it's serious bragging rights, right? You're you walk into the interview, the job interview, you're yeah, I was arrested as a hacker. Interview's over, when can you start? But back then, in 1997, 1998, it was seriously well, what do you mean you were arrested as a hacker? What's that mean for me? It was a very scary thing. And so I feel it's not as taboo, and it really just sort of changed over time. But I apologize, I veered off. But companies would hire me as a former black hat to hack into their network and tell them how I did it. So that's a lot of this research. All of these banks and cryptocurrency exchanges got together and said, well, we want her to hack our networks and tell us how she did it. So that's what I ended up doing. It was pretty much a majority of my career, 2-decade career in cybersecurity, was people hiring me to hack into their cars. I got hired to hack into a train. There was a new connected train system, and they wanted to know if it was impervious to hacking. It was really my career. Sneakers, if any of you remember the movie Sneakers, that was what I did for the last 2 decades of my life.
Miko, I think this is a question that you can answer, and you've touched upon it quite a bit as well in your presentation. Can you provide some examples of some of the just collaboration between cyber criminals and some of these traditional organized crime groups being at the Mob Museum?
There's surprisingly few connections between this new kind of organized crime and traditional mafia-like real-world organized crime. There has been some links regarding money laundering, but that's pretty much it. So what we have here is organized crime, but it's completely new kind of organized crime, much more virtual. Many of these gangs like Lockbit or Clop or Quantum or Alpha or RansomX, their leaders and their most direct reports know each other, but big part of their employees or affiliates are virtual. They don't know where they are. They just pay them typically bi-weekly or bi-monthly salary to hack away or to recruit new hackers or to find vulnerabilities or to run the probably quite boring day-to-day routine of running a ransomware operation. We know quite a bit about the day-to-day organization of these groups because there's been insider leaks from some of these organized virtual crime gangs, and they don't show us any links to traditional organized crime groups. So it is organized crime, but it's completely new kind of organized crime. And to just underline how mundane or routine-like the work of these cybercrime gangs could be is that the fact that they have recruiting people working for them, they have an HR unit, they have lawyers working for them, they have analysts or business analysts working for them, just like any organization. People have holidays, like their employees, like based on their chats, which we've read, they negotiate that they would like to go for a little bit longer holiday, and somebody would like to get a raise in their salaries and all that. The reason why they have business analysts is actually pretty clever. When a company becomes a victim of a ransomware gang, the gang downloads all the data of the company. They don't only encrypt everything that the company has and ask for a ransom to get them decrypted, they also steal everything. And if you don't pay, they will publish all the stolen information on their website, which they run in Tor, hidden service. And the toughest challenge for these gangs is what's the right amount of money to ask from this victim. Now we've hacked into a school. Now we've hacked into a university. This is a medical institution. This is a company. What's the right amount of money? How much could they pay us? $1 million? 10 million? $500,000? So when they download the data that they need for the leak operation, they take the financial information and budgeting information from there and give it to their own business analyst who goes through the figures, who goes through the books and gives a number. That this victim, this company, has this much cash, this much money in short-term loans, this much money in publicly traded stocks. They could pay us tomorrow $2 to $3 million. That's the figure. That's why they need business analysts. So they run the organization like a company.
Wow. Talking about the economic side of all of this, I mean, how much money are we talking?
It's actually hard to put a complete figure, like what's the size of cybercrime globally, because we might be measuring different things. Obviously, the amount of damage done by these crimes are much bigger than the actual money they are pocketing. But the biggest ransomware gangs, groups like Lockbit, have collected hundreds of millions of dollars in ransomware payments. And of course, all of that is collected in Bitcoin. I always carry a Bitcoin on me, so let me just show it to the audience. Mm-hmm. If you've never seen one, here's a Bitcoin. That's what they look like. Well, that's a physical Bitcoin, but you get the idea. The fact that they've been collecting these ransom in cryptocurrencies, typically in Bitcoin or Monero, actually amplifies the wealth that these gangs hold. Groups like Lockbit have been in operation for 6 years. They've been collecting Bitcoins for 6 years. The value of one Bitcoin 6 years ago was $8,000. Now it's $55,000, $58,000, something like that today. They've become pretty automatically wealthy simply by sitting on the amount of money they've collected from their victims. And they do keep most of their wealth in cryptocurrencies because from their point of view, their wealth is safe as long as it's in Bitcoin. If they move it to dollars or rubles, then it's a totally different story.
Yeah. Now, a big aspect of this is also the dark web, which is often associated with these kinds of illegal activities. Alissa, I think this is an area you can chime in on as well. What role do dark web marketplaces play in facilitating cybercrime?
So if you think about it, it's a global economy, right? You need that those storefronts, if you will, to be able to traffic in the sale of personally identifiable information, PHI, which is actually worth more than credit card numbers now. Stolen credit cards, dumps, all of those things, where you can't walk into a Target and sell it, right? You can't sell it at a flea market. So you have what are called dark web marketplaces, which are accessible through things like, Tor, through Tor nodes. But it's basically this massive underground mall, if you will, of different websites, dark websites, where you can buy and sell narcotics, fentanyl, PHI credit card information. The Equifax dump of all of our information is, on the dark web for sale. So, you can pretty much, it's where you would traffic in things like, stolen data or narcotics.
It's also a great example on how technological innovations always bring us upsides and downsides, and we can't just choose the upsides. Encryption in itself is a great example. We all use encryption every day. It's great for our security and privacy. Encryption is awful when criminals and organized crime and terrorists use it, because then law enforcement authorities and intelligence agencies can't see what they are discussing or planning because they use encryption. Tor originally was a project started by United States Air Force to build a system that could be used inside totalitarian countries by people trying to rebel against their own governments. But the same technology today, we see it used much more for these kind of uses, like running dark web markets or running leak sites for ransomware gangs. What Tor, the darknet, what it really does is that it hides the physical location of the server. So if you have a normal if there's a website which has illegal content, law enforcement can just figure out where the server is, like where it physically is, where is the machine. And they can go to the operator and point at the machine that, shut that down or give us that machine, we'll investigate it. Tor makes this impossible. The machine could be anywhere. There's no way to find where the machine is. And it works. I mean, there's only been a handful of cases where Tor websites have been physically found where they are. And if you can't find where the machine is, it can run forever. You can't turn it off, you can't investigate, you can't find out who's running it. So these technologies like encryption or cryptocurrencies or Tor can be used for good, but they can also be used for bad. And there's no way for us to just get the upsides without the downsides.
Mm-hmm. A question for the both of you. Another big topic in this discussion is how law enforcement is attempting to dismantle these cybercrime groups. Obviously, they are facing unique challenges in the digital age. So what obstacles do these different agencies encounter with trying to dismantle cybercrime organizations compared to some of these traditional crime groups?
I feel like, so I have had the unique perspective of being able to work with law enforcement for so long. And I can tell you that because of the caseload, I was actually very shocked to see this, but because of their caseload, there really isn't, they can't spend too many resources on forensics of a single case, right? It's like just quickly run it through the software. If you don't find anything, move on. Just because the caseload is so high, and I feel like even in 2024, law enforcement still there's still a challenge trying to bring the technical prowess that's needed into law enforcement roles for investing. Because if you think about it, so much crime now involves investigating a computer, a laptop, an Apple Watch, a cell phone, in order to determine everything. But I think a lot I think even today they're still struggling, and also sharing of information, in my experience. When 9/11 happened, the intelligence community got together and said, okay, we can never be in a situation again where there's a threat to national security and have one intelligence agency know more than the other. So we're going to create these fusion centers, these intelligence fusion centers, where this will help prevent that. And I think cybersecurity really has moved a lot more into that direction, but I think it could definitely be better, where information sharing across the cybersecurity community just is more transparent, thus trickling down to law enforcement, and having law enforcement being able to also collaborate and do knowledge sharing, early warning, that sort of thing. But I think law enforcement still has a lot of challenges today, and understanding and investigating certain crimes, especially high-tech crimes. We were brought in with Metro, Metro Police Department here in Vegas, and in a program that they were going to start deploying drones, and they wanted to see if I was able to hack those drones. So I mean, so much. There's so much evolution happening, and I feel like law enforcement just continues to try and keep up.
The caseload problem is a very real challenge to law enforcement, also because law enforcement agents who have cyber skills, they used to investigate just hacking incidents. That's changed, because today almost every investigation, regardless of what the crime is, involves forensic examination of computers. If there's been a murder, one of the first things to do is to go through the location history of the deceased person's mobile phone. It has to be done by a cyber expert. If there's a robbery and there's a suspect, one of the first things is to check the Google search history of the suspect. So you need more and more expertise, and big part of the cutting edge of experts is in the private sector, not in the public sector. And then there's the international issue. This is a very international problem. I work extensively with, I've been an advisor for Europol for more than 10 years. I've also worked extensively with Interpol. And that's one of the challenges we have. Almost any of the crime cases that gets investigated isn't happening inside a country. It's always multiple countries. And in many cases, these criminals route their attacks on purpose through multiple different locations, just to make it harder for investigations, that they have to get cooperation from 10 different countries' law enforcement just to investigate the case.
What strategies do you think have proven to be most effective in combating some of these cybercrime syndicates?
I was driving down the strip yesterday, and somewhere around Paris, there was one of these huge displays you have over here in Vegas, advertising rewards for justice, which is the State Department's program for giving money on people who give them leads to catch terrorist leaders and cyber criminals. They're offering right now $10 million for information leading to a handful of the biggest cybercrime gangs out there. Also, similar rewards for catching some of the North Korean hackers who've been cracking or hacking into cryptocurrency exchanges to fix the North Korean budget deficit, which is a story in itself. The concept of giving money and also giving immunity from prosecution to gang members to rat on their friends works. You can sort of imagine that if you're in this gang and you see the news that, hey, they're offering $10 million if I rat my friends, which means all my friends will go to jail, but I won't. I'm going to get immunity, and I'm going to get $10 million. And then you realize that all my friends have seen the news as well. So they really start to eat these gangs from the inside. They work. We've seen this work multiple times. So I really love the State Department's Rewards for Justice program.
Yeah. Alissa, I think this is a topic that you touched upon before, but AI. Can you just elaborate a little bit more into how artificial intelligence influences this landscape? And Miko, I'm sure you have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. Companies are now producing not terabytes of data a day, but petabytes. And there's so much data, so much traffic going in and out of the ingress and egress points for companies that humans can't remain in a loop forever, where it doesn't matter if you have a blank check in a security operations center with 1,000 analysts. It's really difficult to keep up with the amount of data coming in out of networks, and the ability for security controls like network intrusion detection, that sort of thing, or API gateways. There's so much data going in and out that you can no longer rely on text searches for data, where you have to use AI, where machine learning is really the only methodology that we have now to be able to deal with so much data. And I think it's shaping not only the security controls that we rely on, where now black hat briefings got AI written on every vendor booth, and because no one really wants a firewall or an IDS or a SIM or a TIP anymore unless it's got AI in it. They don't know what the AI does or why it needs it, but they just want to make sure if they buy it, it's got AI. So I think it's changing not only just defense, but it's also changing offense, where you're now seeing tools being leveraged by AI or being written by AI, exploits being written by AI.
And we've been waiting for this revolution for 40 years or so, but now it really is here. And what really brought the AI revolution to reality is generative AI, which sounds complicated, but what it really means is that we have a system where you show content to the system and then it generates content like that. So you show text to a system and then it generates text. You show, you speak to a system, you show a lot of spoken word and it can understand speech and speak. That's what it does. And that's why we are seeing now all these things like large language models, like ChatGPT, which can speak all languages because it's read through every single book ever written by humans in all languages. So it can read and speak all languages now. Right now in Germany, in the top 40 hits list, number 27, charting in the radios, is a song completely made by an AI, made with Udio, which is a system you could use yourself. It's a website. So this system has been given a prompt, give us a happy song about this topic, and it has written, arranged, played, and sang the song. Auf Deutsch, of course, because it's in Germany. And it's right now in chart list number 27. Who gets the royalties is a great question, isn't it? So clearly, things are now changing very quickly, and they are, once again, changing for the better and changing for the worse, and we can't just pick the upsides. A lot of cyber defense is being done with these generative AI systems. In fact, it's the only way we can keep up with the amount of attacks we're seeing. At the very same time, the attackers are looking at this as well. And the most practical area where we are seeing attacks today is with deepfakes. There's consumer scams which use stolen faces of celebrities like Elon Musk pushing cryptocurrency scams onto users in Facebook. And of course, we see politicians, their voices and their faces being stolen with deepfakes all the time. We're not very far away from everyday use of real-time Teams calls from the CFO to the financial people to tell them that one of our clients has changed banks and we have to update the account numbers. Can you do it right away? That's going to happen.
My final question for the both of you, how can just the average internet user just better protect themselves from cyber threats in their daily lives?
Miko touched on this, the problem with scams, and they've gotten just so sophisticated. I think, the average user isn't going to extract their telemedicine app or their bank app off their Android phone and reverse engineer it and look for all the vulnerabilities in it to determine if it's safe to use. Here's the thing. I think you can only do so much to protect yourselves. The good news is that like banks, credit card companies are quick to refund money when scams are involved. So the corporate America has shouldered a lot of that liability. I think it's just be safe, and And if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. I mean, I was shocked. We were just talking about AI. This new scam now is they use AI to generate the voice of a family member, and they demonstrated how this mom called her daughter, needing her to send her money immediately, and it was completely, the voice of the mother was generated completely with AI, and the daughter couldn't figure out whether or not it was really her mom or not. So I think for my advice would be, there's only so much you can do. Install, make sure you're running anti-malware on your computer, and be careful what you click on. And especially when it comes now with phone calls or text messages, which is called smishing. But I mean, it's always a game of cat and mouse and leapfrog, right? We're always going to struggle to try and keep up with the black hats, with the hackers. And it's just, for every step they take, they take 2 steps. So, there's only so much we can do.
I have 3 tips. First one is updates. Whenever you get prompted about something that wants to update an app or an operating system, do it. Typically, you get better security when your systems are up to date. It's not just that you get new features or whatever, you get better security. Update your systems. Number 2, back it up. Make sure you have backups of your data. And make sure you back up your personal information so that if you imagine that your house burns down and your computers and your phones burn down with it, do you still have your holiday pictures? If you still have them in the cloud or on a removable hard drive in another place, that's fine. That's the way, if you think about your security or backups like that, then you're also secure against many other problems as well. And then the last thing is simply what you said already. If it seems too good to be true, on the internet, it's never true.
I just realized mine was a little too existential. Yours was all happy, mine was all dark and gray. MFA. That's a big one. We have so many family members who call us up because my wife and I are apparently the geek squad for our entire family. And it's because somebody's email account got compromised, and their bank account and everything else, because they didn't have multi-factor authentication turned on. I know it's a pain in the butt. We all hate it, but install that MFA app on your phone. We always have our phones with us, always, right? You may not go back home because you left your wallet at home, but you'll definitely go back home if your phone was left at home, right? Well, we always go back for our phone. But yeah, so I mean, I would say, my advice to the consumer, especially in today's world, passwords should have been dead decades ago. Make sure that you've got MFA turned on banking, on your email accounts, on everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Big one.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, and we have a mic. This is being recorded, so we just want to make sure we get the sound right, and Christy will come over and help.
I wanted to go a little bit deeper on your question about where are these adversarials from, because in the reports we read of these companies, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, it is true that you have high level of confidence that Lockbit, Ransom House, these groups are from Russia, China, North Korea, APTs, and so on. But last year, we have 2 cases of detentions, law enforcement cases. One, it was in New York. It was Bridge Forum's administrator. He was in New York. And the other one was Lazarus, member, that was in the UK. So how biased is the information we consume and produce from this side of the world, and what are we missing, right?
Yeah, and I totally agree. We sometimes see this system or see this problem as black and white, that the problem is coming from far away, and it's not. We definitely have cyber criminals anywhere in the world. Finland, where I live, is a very small country. We have 5.5 million people. It's very safe, very secure. We just convicted a cyber criminal, locally grown Finnish guy 2-3 months ago. They exist everywhere. many of the largest gangs do operate from Russia, but not only from Russia. So you're right, I do agree.
2 quick questions. One, you were talking about being able to control people's cars. I don't know the technical term for all this stuff. Yeah. But autonomous cars, are they putting programs together right now, law enforcement companies with autonomous cars, so that you're driving an autonomous car and they want you at the police station and you're driving the car, they can roll the windows up, lock the doors, and take you to the police station?
I like the way you think.
I'm scared to death of that, I might add.
So I can't comment on controls that law enforcement has implemented into vehicles or not implemented in vehicles, but that I would imagine my first gut reaction response to that is I don't know how they would have the budget for something that could do that, nor who would pay for it. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. A lot of people think that if they're not driving around in a Tesla that it can't be hacked. That's just not true. Every car made after 2001, GM OnStar, is connected. Every car on the road now communicates with servers and can be controlled remotely. That's why you can control your car, even if it's a Honda or a Toyota, with an app on your phone. What I discovered in my research was that one of the big ones, I'll go a little into it, but like with Ford, I found out that even if I wasn't you, I could go into the Ford app and add your car. So if I knew your VIN number, and we all know how easy that is, you just walk up to the car and look through the windshield. If I know your VIN number, I could add it to the app and say that that's my car, and it did nothing to authorize that. And so once I added your car, I then figured out that there were hidden controls outside of the app that were supported on the back end, but not supported in the mobile app, like shutting your engine off or unlocking the doors. So I mean, it's not just an autonomous vehicle or a Tesla problem. It's an everyone problem now.
A second quick question. We've heard about the dangers of buying things on Temu or using TikTok. Is that truly a danger?
Here's the thing with buying. I'm assuming you're talking about like if you use your credit card there, could it be compromised or I'm a hacker. And I always will be a hacker, and everything in my house is connected, even my water softener. Like, I can remotely access it. I'm just, like, I mean, we live in an exciting time. Like, we're all very fortunate to be alive today because it is a really cool time. And I say enjoy it. Like, your bank, your credit card company, you call them, the moment you call them, tell them that was not a purchase I made, they refund your money. So, if you want to buy something on TikTok, then you go ahead and do that. Buy all you want. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many now financial controls in place where, because of AI, being able to interrogate that data, that there's a lot more controls in place for the consumer now, because a lot of the banks have to shoulder that liability.
Thank you very much. Miko, this question is for you. Now with the first Neuralink having been successfully installed into a volunteer, at some point somebody will develop a version of this that will go online, and at that point now we're talking about a human getting hacked. My question to you, sir, is at that point, is the risk worth any of the benefits at all?
The technologies that we're building where we're actually able to augment not just human body, but human mind, they do bother me. I think there are some limits we probably shouldn't be crossing. It's not just Neuralink. There's also projects in a couple of universities in different parts of the world where they're trying to model the whole human brain so they could run brain simulators. And of course, there the final outcome would be that we would be able to move our memories, our thoughts, our consciousness to a machine. And if we are able to do that one day, we're not even close. I mean, even the fastest supercomputers in the world can't simulate human brain. We don't fully understand the technology, how brain works to do that. But you could imagine that one day we would be able to do that. And if you would then be able to move your memories and thoughts and consciousness to a machine, then that basically would mean that you would live forever, or we would live forever. That doesn't sound right. But of course, there's no way to know for a fact if we've actually been able to do that already in the past, and none of this is real.
We'll do just 2 more.
So I read a lot of science fiction. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it was Isaac Asimov that first introduced the idea that AI could become smarter than we are. And a lot of people, I think, fear that. Is that a realistic fear, or is it just people that don't understand what AI is?
The human level of intelligence isn't the maximum. I mean, when we are building systems that are able to learn, there's no limits on how smart they could become. And the reason why this current revolution, the AI revolution, is different from all the previous technology revolution is that this revolution can improve itself. What I mean is that you could take, let's talk about OpenAI. OpenAI could take the source code of GPT. They could take the source code and show it to GPT. But hey, GPT, this is you. You're this. Read through your own code. Figure out how you work. Figure out how you were programmed. Understand yourself, then improve yourself. Even a tiny improvement is enough. Let's make yourself faster or more efficient. And then when you've done that, run the improved version and take the improved source code and show it to the improved version. Hey, this is you. Read through your code. Improve yourself. Even a tiny improvement would be enough. Then you repeat that procedure for like 1 billion times, which would probably take 15 minutes. And you would end up with something that we humans would have no chance of understanding how it works anymore. It clearly could become superior to us in memory, in understanding, in logics, in creativity, in everything. Is that potentially problematic? Of course it is. If it's not aligned with our interest, it could have completely different interest. Whether it would turn hostile against us, that's more like science fiction department. Most likely it would ignore us. It wouldn't need us for anything. It probably wouldn't care about what we do. But introducing a superior intelligence into your own biosphere sounds like a basic evolutionary mistake.
Let's do one last one here.
This is for the resident hacker. What's the good malware protection for a regular PC at home? Which one of the better ones?
Yeah, I actually did a lot of research into this, because you've got the companies that have been around forever, like McAfee and Symantec, but I don't know, am I allowed to make a recommendation?
Of course you are.
I don't want to get the Mob Museum in trouble. My thing has always been Bitdefender. So like when I compromise Windows machines, one of the only tools that was able to stop me was a computer that was running Bitdefender and my backdoors. So I've always used Bitdefender.
Big Defender?
Yeah, Bitdefender. It's anti-malware software.
Okay, and just to let you know, we have a couple of Alexas, and I tried to put my wife's on my app, and they won't only let one on the app now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of
sophisticated now.
Yeah, there's a lot of look, the weakest link in security is humans, right? I mean, we're just the thing is, but the neat thing about humans, the amazing thing about humans is that we continuously evolve and get better. And so as vulnerabilities have been discovered in other car makers, the other car makers will figure out what those issues are and fix it in their app. So, we're continuously evolving and getting better and making more and more secure products. And I think that's why it's important for companies to hire black hats, hire former hackers, because you can't secure where you can't break, right? So, I think it's important that companies continue to do that.
Thank you. So for those interested in diving deeper into these topics, Miko will be holding a book signing of his book right here. If it's smart, it's vulnerable. It will be for purchase in the courtroom waiting area. And let's just give our fantastic panelists a round of applause.
Thank you.